What if Ferrari arrives in Australia with the most complete car on the grid, but we haven't realized it yet? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Because in Bahrain, we didn't see fireworks, we didn't see headlines of devastating fast laps, we didn't see a Ferrari sweeping in simulated qualifying, but what we did see was something much more dangerous. A car that doesn't lose speed at the end of straight, that doesn't destroy tires in long runs, and that maintains balance when others start to suffer. And you know what's really disturbing? That the SF-26 might not have shown even 100% of its potential. While some teams look to impress on the times, Ferrari seemed to work quietly, fine-tuning energy management, aerodynamic stability, and real race consistency. And if what we saw in Sakir was only the controlled version, entonces Australia podría ser el primer gran golpe de autoridad. Ferrari arrives at the Australian Grand Prix with a very different feeling than in other years. There is no excessive euphoria, there are no explosive headlines for a miraculous return, there is no invincible car narrative built in February. But that is precisely where the difference lies. The SF-26 was not presented as a classification missile, it was presented as a coherent system, as a project worked from a hybrid base to the last aerodynamic piece. In Bahrain, something fundamental became clear. This car is not designed to impress in a single lap, but to sustain performance. On the long straights of Sakir, when other cars were beginning to show clear signs of clipping, that drop in speed at the end of the straight when the electrical deployment runs out, the Ferrari maintained top speed constantly until the braking point. That's not a minor detail. It means that energy management is extremely well resolved. The integration between the thermal engine, hybrid system, and electrical deployment works as a whole, not as isolated pieces. But wasn't just a matter of straight-line speed. In the second sector of Bahrain, the most technical, the most sensitive to aerodynamic balance and chassis behavior, the SF-26 looked clean. Without sudden corrections, without chronic oversteer at corner exit, without that nervousness that a narrow aerodynamic window reveals. The car seemed settled. And when a car looks calm in testing, it is usually a sign that the correlation between simulator, wind tunnel, and track is working. Another key point was degradation. If Ferrari showed anything in Sakir, it was a remarkable ability to maintain pace on long runs. They did not necessarily lead each sector on an isolated lap, but when the full stints were reconstructed, the drop in times was more controlled than in several direct rivals. This points to a well-thought-out thermal management and a balanced aerodynamic load that does not destroy the tires after just a few laps. Furthermore, there is an important nuance that changes the overall reading. The SF-26 is not a fragile car, it is a demanding car. If it's not in your ideal window, it can look discreet. But when placed in its correct working range, performance appears consistently. And that in a long championship is more valuable than a specific peak of performance. All this paints a clear picture before arriving at Albert Park. Ferrari does not land in Australia looking to discover its car. It arrives with a solid foundation with consistent data and with a platform that its engineers seem to understand. The SF-26 doesn't seem like a risky bet. It seems like a thoughtful evolution, designed to compete from the first race that in Bahrain. A technical concept appeared that can make a difference throughout the season. The work around the blown exhaust and rear flow management, combined with what has been internally called flick-tail mode. It is not a decorative element, nor a simple incremental evolution. It is a solution designed to use exhaust gases as an active aerodynamic tool within regulatory limits. And what does this mean in practical terms? It means generating additional rear load in critical acceleration phases without excessively penalizing drag. It means stabilizing the flow that feeds the diffuser at times when the car usually loses support. And above all, it means improving traction without punishing the rear tires. En Bahrain, donde la degradación térmica es brutal. El SF-26 mostró una consistencia que no parecía fruto de la casualidad. This system does not make the Ferrari the most visually spectacular car, but can make it one of the most dynamically efficient. Because when a car manages to produce support in strategic areas without compromising resistance to progress, it becomes extremely competitive on urban or semi-urban circuits such as Albert Park. And here comes the second key element, energy management as an extension of aerodynamics. The SF-26 was conceived from the back to the front. It is not a car to which an engine was adapted. It is a project where the hybrid unit, the battery, and the electrical deployment are part of the overall aerodynamic design. That is the reason why a sharp drop in speed was not observed on the straight. While other cars used up energy before braking, Ferrari maintained constant thrust. That in Australia can be decisive. Albert Park has several middle straights where sustained deployment allows you to defend your position or prepare for overtaking. If Ferrari can maintain that energy efficiency without compromising cooling or rear stability, it will have a very powerful strategic weapon. And there is even a more disturbing detail. Ferrari has not shown its full aerodynamic potential. There is room for immediate evolution. The car seen in Bahrain does not seem to be the most aggressive version possible. That suggests the team is managing its development with a cool head, evaluating conditions before rolling out more radical configurations. What we are seeing is not a Ferrari desperate to make up ground. It is a Ferrari that is structured, patient, and aware that the championship is not won in a brilliant lap, but in the constant accumulation of performance. SF-26 doesn't look like an experiment. It seems like a mature project from the beginning. And if that technical maturity translates into real consistency on Sunday in Melbourne, Ferrari could send a much stronger message than any isolated pole position. Albert Park usually features abrasive asphalt when the temperature rises, and in 2025 the calendar places the race at a point where the heat can play a leading role. In Bahrain, the SF-26 showed controlled degradation, especially at extended tempo. If that thermal management is replicated in Australia, Ferrari could become the most consistent car on Sunday, even if it doesn't dominate on Saturday. And here a psychological point appears that is not minor. Ferrari arrives without the absolute media focus. It wasn't the loudest car in pre-season. It did not generate a narrative of dominance. This reduces external pressure and allows them to execute with greater serenity. In previous seasons, the team came into the first race with inflated expectations. This time the feeling is different. There is internal confidence, but public caution. Another important detail is that the SF-26 seems to have room for immediate growth. It is not perceived as a concept on the limit, but as a stable platform with planned evolution. That means Australia is not all or nothing. It is the first validation point. If the car confirms what was seen in the test, Ferrari will not only add strength, it will send message. A message that goes beyond the specific result. That SF-26 does not depend on specific conditions. That doesn't need a specific track to work, which is not a car of peaks, but of perseverance. And in a long championship, consistency is what builds titles. The final unknown is this. Does Ferrari arrive in Australia as a contender or as a silent reference? Because if what we saw in Bahrain was only 90% of the real potential, the Australian Grand Prix could be the moment when the SF-26 stops being a technical promise and becomes the most serious threat of the season since the first green flag. The SF-26 wasn't designed to grab headlines in February. It was designed to sustain performance in March, April, and beyond. In Bahrain, we didn't see a Ferrari unleashed looking to impress. We saw a Ferrari working on energy efficiency, aerodynamic balance, and controlled degradation. We saw a car that maintains speed when others begin to lose it. We saw a stable car when the wind changes. We saw consistency as the stint lengthened. And that, in modern Formula One, is worth gold. Australia will be the first real test. Syncargus altus to combustible occultus. No conservative test maps. No partial simulations. There we will know if the hybrid integration, the work around the blown exhaust, and the stability in technical sectors translate into big points on Sunday. But even before the traffic lights go out, one thing is already clear. Ferrari doesn't seem to be chasing. Ferrari seems to be building. And when a team builds well from the ground up, it doesn't need miracles. You just need to execute. If the SF-26 confirms in Albert Park what it hinted at in Sakir, we will not be talking about a specific surprise. We will be talking about the beginning of a season where Ferrari returns to compete from coherence, not from improvisation. The big question is no longer whether Ferrari can win in Australia. The big question is whether the rest have really understood what the SF-26 showed in Bahrain. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.